Multiple efforts to keep your kids safer in school failed during this year's legislative session in Annapolis.
As Project Baltimore's Chris Papps explains, many bills were introduced to protect students, though none passed.
Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title?
Maryland lawmakers were busy during 2025's legislative session. They passed new taxes and fees to raise an estimated $1.6 billion in additional revenue. They expanded assistance for displaced federal workers and passed the Second Look Act, which provides certain prison inmates with an opportunity to petition their sentences. Annapolis, in all, passed 878 pieces of legislation during the 90-day session, but some heavily debated bills dealing with school safety were not among them.
Well, it's highly disappointing. First of all, our schools are unsafe.
Multiple school safety bills were drafted and debated this legislative session as a result of Project Baltimore investigations.
It makes me angry. You're sitting there putting this monster into high school with other people's children. You're putting children at risk.
In September, Project Baltimore broke the news that Walter Martinez, an MS-13 gang member and suspected murderer, attended 2 Maryland high schools as police investigated him for the murder of Kayla Hamilton. And the schools he attended were not made aware that he was a threat.
And that's a big concern.
In response to our reporting, Delegate Nino Mangione, a Republican from Baltimore County, introduced House Bill 68, which stated if a child is being investigated for a violent felony, that child cannot attend school in person until the investigation is complete.
The safety of all students and children can be considered and kept at the forefront of all decisions.
In January, Project Baltimore first reported that Baltimore City Judge Charles Bloomquist ended probation for a juvenile sex offender who had pleaded to multiple sex offenses. That decision by the judge removed the teen from the Juvenile Sex Offender Registry, allowing him to return to school in person. As a result, Republican Delegate Mike Griffith from Harford and Cecil counties introduced House Bill 952, which mandated juvenile sex offenders remain on the Juvenile Sex Offender Registry until probation is terminated or the juvenile turns 18 years old, whichever occurs later. House Bills 952 and 68 never made it out of committee. They died quickly. Opponents, such as the Maryland Office of the Public Defender, argued they violate due process rights and are unconstitutional. Proponents of the bill disagree and plan to reintroduce them next year and try again. But there was one piece of school safety legislation this session that did appear to have a chance to pass.
Hopefully the situation won't happen again.
Endorsed by Delegate Vanessa Atterbury, an influential Democrat from Howard County, House Bill 1265 mandated if a student transfers who was previously arrested and charged with a serious crime known as a reportable offense, the new school must be alerted. The state house did pass 1265, but it died in the Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee in the Senate.
We want to make sure that our schools are safe, that children are feeling safe, that parents are feeling safe sending their children to school.
The most significant state action taken this year to keep students safe,
I also have to give credit,
came from State Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Carrie Wright, and the Maryland State Board of Education.
So I think that's something that we're going to have to continue to work with our legislative colleagues on.
The state school board in February unanimously passed a regulation mandating school system administrators alert other districts if a student who commits a reportable offense transfers. If a district violates the regulation, the state could withhold funding. The language is similar to that found in House Bill 1265, which, had it passed, would have provided harsher penalties if violated.
Over this previous legislative session,
At a recent press conference, we asked the state superintendent about the other school safety bills that did not pass, specifically the ones concerning Walter Martinez.
If that were to happen again, or it could be happening right now, that students are being investigated for murder, and the schools don't know, is that concerning to you?
I think we have to abide by the law, and I think that's the part that I think everybody's struggling with, is how do we do that in such a way that guarantees everyone's rights are protected. That, to me, is the part that we need to have further conversation about.
Project Baltimore will continue to follow legislation that affects education in the state of Maryland. In the coming days, we'll have more on school choice, which is becoming a growing movement throughout America. But in the meantime, we want to hear from you. Do you have a comment or concern about your child's education? Call our hotline, send me an email, follow us on social media, head to foxbaltimore.com to follow our progress. I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore. I'm Chris Pabst. Thanks for watching. Here's another story to watch. Also, if you have a story idea, please send us a message.